I'm just delighted to be here with the opportunity to talk to Sue Ellen Thompson, a literary treasure on Maryland's Eastern Shore, ever since she moved here in 2006. And all of us in the poetry world know her not only as a master craftsperson, but also as a mentor, a teacher, a lecturer, and an important advocate for poetry on the shore and elsewhere.
Great. Thank you, Meredith, for being willing to do this.
First of all, I love the book, and I don't know how well it shows up on the camera, but it has this really evocative title and cover photo. Just a beautiful book. But I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about it. So it's been a while since you've had a new book out, and it seems to me that this one, which is both new and selected, so it weaves together some of your past work, some of your wonderful past work from two books that I also loved, The Golden Hour and They, along with some new work. Um, it seems to me it's it's kind of an ongoing conversation in poetry with many of the same things that have informed your work or have perhaps inspired you to write your work. Has your source of inspiration changed? Are you still dealing with family matters, but do you have kind of a different perspective now at this stage in your career?
Yes, I would say so. Although there are still plenty of poems in that first half of the book that deal with, marriage and parenting and all that sort of thing. I have poems in there about global warming, about living in Oxford, about just the title poem, in fact, is not really specifically about my usual themes at all. So it seemed a broader based gathering. And yet I felt that without some of the earlier poems, readers would not be able to fully understand or appreciate some of the newer poems on the old themes.
I wondered if you had poetry heroes.
Yes, well, I mean, I was certainly brought up and educated in the Frost mode as a college student and after, and I always appreciated the fact that anyone could read a Frost poem and get something out of it, like it or whatever. But among more contemporary poets, I mean, my idol for the past several years has been Jane Kenyon, who died at the age of 47. She would have been just a little bit older than I am now, but she died quite a long time ago, having published only, I think, 4 full collections. But I so admire how pared down her poems are. They're personal, but they never cross over that line into revealing too much or becoming sentimental or whatever. I've always admired Jane Kenyon for her spareness, and a poet like Sharon Olds for her courage, her willingness to write about these subjects that poets for generations have avoided. So I would say they're 2 of my contemporary heroes in poetry.
It seems to me in your work, you very elegantly avoid crossing that line ever. But maybe part of that is your interest in formal constraints, whether they're subliminal or, I think of the sonnet form, which of course, you seem to have mastered. And I wondered if form doesn't supply kind of oven mitts, for approaching subjects that might be a little too hot, if there wasn't that kind of distance that form somehow seems to, or structure of that nature seems to provide.
Yes, definitely. A lot of my subjects are extremely emotional and extremely personal. And I find that, any kind of formal constraint, whether it's, stanza form or rhyme or whatever, helps me keep my own emotion in check. It keeps me from crossing that line. And yes, I find it very helpful. And I do use it quite deliberately for that reason.
One of the things that's interesting to me, I think about hearing you read from They when that book came out, which is largely the story of parenting a transgendered child and the challenges of that. And somewhere I read that you said that you hoped to initiate a wider conversation about that. And I wonder how you feel now that certainly the conversation is wider, but often contentious. Has it changed your view of the role of poetry, or perhaps looking back on those poems, do you think they have served their purpose?
Well, that book came out in 2014, back when most people, and certainly those of my generation, had never heard the word transgender, did not know what it meant. And so, my purpose was largely educational. And, people had such a hard time with the singular they, that use of a plural pronoun to refer to one person. It was a huge problem in writing the poems and making them understandable. I never foresaw the kind of backlash and anti-trans things that are going on now. I mean, I never thought I would have to do more than familiarize and educate. I never thought I would have to fight and argue with people over, what gender identity is, whether or not it's a choice. All of those subjects come up a lot more now, and it's deeply disturbing to me. That's not what I was thinking when I was writing the poems. I was just trying to familiarize a population that hadn't heard of the word, just like me, with what it meant and how it was different from sexual orientation, for example. Things are actually way worse now. The issues are much more serious.
I just congratulate you on tackling that very tough subject, and all the subjects that you approach having to do with family and relationships, have their element of struggle, but an overriding element of tenderness that I think makes your work especially gratifying. So I wonder if you have any feelings that we haven't already talked about as far as the role of poetry or what's going on in the world of poetry now. Are there
poetry nowadays is so different from the way I saw the poetry world when I was starting out. I mean, the whole thing about performance poetry, I know that has drawn a much bigger audience, but a lot of those poems don't hold up on the page. I was trained and brought up in the era of you read a poem on the page and then then you go hear the poet read it. But Instagram, I don't even have an account.
I don't either, actually.
Yeah, I'm just totally ignorant about that. Yeah, I feel a little out of it sometimes, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So much of the poetry that I read nowadays in the magazines does not speak to me. It either goes right over my head or past one ear or the other, and I can't retain it. I can never come up with a line or a phrase that stays with me. It seems to just evaporate. And I don't know if that's because of my age or what, but I'm pretty old school.
I just want to applaud Sue Ellen Thompson, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Hopefully, everyone will see you on September 27th at the Stoltz Listening Room of the Avalon Theater in Eastern.
Thank you, Meredith. It was my pleasure.